That would be it. You're not recording. I'm saving power because you're not recording.
So where are you applying the water?
Can you see the shine? For right now, it's all over the face because I don't want a hard edge. Now, I've got a very light area right there, but I'll show you what that's going to do here in just a second. So I did this demo, and I'm going to avoid the lips because it really needs some masking fluid in the lips. Normally, I should have already had that done, but I don't. So I did a demo for the Big Spring Art Association several weeks ago, and they had a little confusion, and so my demo was 30 minutes long. I did that there because they had scheduled two of us. Yeah. So, and I'm going to wait. There's a little difference, a little shift in the color on the shoulders than the face, and so I'm going to wait about doing that. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and get into my purple, and I've got, this is the Garnet Lake. I know this is my darkest, I've got a shadow here. This is my darkest area, but this is pretty dark over here. And it comes down, I'm watching it comes down over his eye, her eye. And there's a glow on the side of the face, so I'm going to leave that alone a little bit. Some of this is going to move over there, and I have a dry spot. Can you see it? Right there, you can see that. See this fuzzy line, and then this little area right here? That's dry, and so it made a really straight line. So I want to catch that before it dries straight. Rinse my brush off a little bit and dry it off a little bit, and then I'm just going to hit that with just the tip of my brush to soften that edge. There's some times that I don't mind a hard edge, but that's not a place that I want a hard edge. All right, then this comes over underneath this there's a little light area right there. And then this is dark in this spot, and so here, what I'm looking at is not just that this is dark skin. That's not what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the shadows. And I may have started to dry a little bit here, so I'm going to go ahead and, let me see if I'm dry. I think it's good. So this little shadow area kind of comes across right in here, and then around the chin. And I will not finish this today. I'm just getting some foundational pieces in. So my first portrait, she was doing my little bio, but my first portrait that I did, that I remember, that was actually displayed at our school, I was in the 5th grade, and it was John Glenn. And so I got to think, why was I so fascinated with John Glenn in the 5th grade? What did he do that made me want to paint him or feel like I needed to paint his portrait? I've got a little shadow on this side. And so I Googled it, of course, since I didn't have any history books with me. And he, in 1962, which I was in 5th grade, you can do the math, he circled the Earth. Yeah, he circled the Earth 6 times, orbited the Earth 6 times. And so I think that was the reason that I was kind of smitten with him. And I don't remember whether the portrait that I painted, whether he had on his astronaut suit or not, but probably so. All right, so I want to go ahead and, this is a little rough right in here, kind of soften that a little bit, and I don't want to get into my highlighted areas. Soften that. This is highlight, that's good. This is light right in here. Make sure, I'm going to lift some of that out, so I'm drying off my paintbrush and just lifting out a little bit of that light. This is not shadow, this is just skin color. So discerning the difference here of what is shadow and what is skin color. And there's a highlight right in here, but this is kind of looking a little kind of strange. So let me pick that out just a little bit. And then we are going to move on. And so sometimes watercolor can be like teenage kids. You know, it's like you look away and you look back and you're like, what were you thinking? What? I didn't want you to go there and do that. No. No, no, no. And I need to fix that because that would just really stand out. All right. All right, we'll set that aside. And it looks pretty creepy. Looks pretty creepy. So whenever I was doing this one, I did it without doing the eyes, and so I had to come back and do the eyes because it was just too spooky looking. All right, so now I've got these two pieces that I've done that have the purple on it, and I didn't do this really dark, and that's just all this is just more pigment, less water. That's how you get the stronger, darker colors. More pigment, less water. This is a little cheater. I can't remember which artist I saw. Several artists use this, and you can put this onto your image, and you can see that's pretty light. That's almost really right there, just almost a really pale purple. And then or scoot it down, you know, into these like the really dark areas and see how dark and get those values more accurately. The same thing, get a little bit larger area so you can kind of see what colors you're dealing with, and does it match on any of these things that I've got over here. It's kind of in here a little bit. So anyway, I went ahead and put eyeballs on this one, on this child last night. But we're really not exactly where we want to be just yet. And this is a cheater that I'll do sometimes. And this really helps me to establish value. Okay? Because it's, you know, you think well, that's looking pretty good. But then whenever you start to compare, that's not anywhere where it needs to be yet. It's not anywhere dark enough yet. The eyes are pretty close on the color on the eyes. So I'm probably not going to do anything else with the eyes other than take the masking fluid out of there. But over here, let me show you. So because of color mixing, that was what I was going to show you. Not just about how to paint portraits, but how to mix color. Now I want to tell you about this color. This is a Van Gogh color that I've had for a long, long time, and it's called Naples Yellow Red. And some of y'all, Carolyn, do you use that? I don't either, but I feel compelled I need to show you this. But I don't use it, and I'm probably not going to use it, but, and maybe I'm stubborn. I just don't like the way that it looks whenever it's dry. Okay, so let me just grab a piece of paper here. So it's really a pretty close flesh color. I think it might be just a tiny bit opaque, and I could probably get into some cadmium red and get a nice little cheek color going on, a little blush color or lips colors. I'm just kind of stubborn that way. So, but if you want to use that, and they don't normally sell, like I haven't seen much of like portrait palettes. Get these two pieces back over here. All right, so Hansa Yellow. And so a lot of times what I'll do is I'll mix on the palette and on the paper. So what did I decide? This color's pretty good. So why am I mixing Hansa Yellow? Get out of that. Let's get over here in this is burnt umber. So we'll go into burnt umber and alizarin crimson. And alizarin crimson has a little bit more blue in it. Than the cadmium red. And that looks pretty like, really? But let's see. If I put this on this purple, am I getting pretty close on that? A little bit more umber. Now this is a little thing that I learned. I took an portrait intensive with Michael Dudash several years ago, and this is one of the things that he would do, and that was to go to the edge of the paper with the pigment to see are we getting pretty close on the skin tones. And so I think that's getting pretty close. I'm not going to do this whole face. Let's get some color on here. So if I'm going to find me a stopping spot, I'm going to go beyond where I think I need to go with just the clear water. And so I think I'm just going to kind of do this little area with this really dark. All right, so while I'm doing this, and I'll talk about some of my portraits over there. There's a guy over there with a big yellow hat on. His name is Jesus. And my husband and I were at McDonald's one morning. I think we were with our grandson. Had him out to go play in the little tubes or whatever. And so that guy walked in. And I spotted the hat. Thank you with all the hat inspiration. I actually wasn't copying Carolyn with all the hat people. But their hats are just interesting. Anyway, so I went around and I introduced myself to him. And I said, I'm an artist and I would love to do your portrait. Love your hat, love the sunglasses. And he said, well, I'm a hairdresser and I think that I've done your hair before. And I said, oh no, I can promise you, your hands have never touched my hair. I am not coming on to you. I just want to photograph you and paint your portrait. And so anyway, so and now that my husband's gone, I have to be really careful about who I say I would like to photograph you or stalk them around to be able to photograph them. Like, yeah, no, don't do that. So this still has a little bit of a glow right there, so I'm going to get off of that. This is called a glazing layer because the color underneath here is dry. And so I've mixed in my palette, and I'm also mixing on the paper. So I'm adding just a little bit more of that umber to get that drama going on in that little eye. This gal, she takes some just amazing photographs. I love her stuff. And this little ear is really, really dark, but I don't want to get into my side glow too much, so I'll probably come back and get that. And so since I've got this a wet edge, then I can pretty much, I'm going to go ahead and feather that out just a little bit more. And soften that edge too. This shadow that's right on her nose is a pretty distinct shadow, and the details that are going on in the nose. So I'm going to wait about doing those until this is dry. All right, and I've got this little light area that's right here. Make sure that doesn't bleed down in there too much. And I don't want to pick that up. I could pick it up with a tissue or a paper towel, but I'd rather pick it up with a thirsty brush. There's a little highlight right in there, so we'll get some of that. And I might come back later and touch some of this with a little scrubber brush. All right, I'm going to see about while I'm here, just because I just want to give y'all. This is a Scrub Buddy. Y'all ever use those for your dishes? I love them. And when they die, they die. They don't die a slow death. They're good one day, and the next day they're not any good anymore. And I don't know, I might rather need a sponge, but I'm kind of thinking that I might get some really interesting little hair texture with that. And I think that's about right. It's not the right color. I'm going to leave that alone because this really has a different shade of what that I've got going on here. All right, so we'll put her to the side. And that's getting there. Now then, and I was telling Renee and Marcia on the way here, whatever in the world, what was I thinking I don't know why I would do something this ridiculous, but oh my is right. Yes. Okay, so me and Renee and I were at a workshop at Fort Davis with Mr. Tim, and I photographed him. We were having lunch, and I photographed him sitting out on the patio. So anyway, to do a little bit of white skin stuff here, I thought, well, it's a good photograph. I'll go ahead and do it. This is printed on regular printer paper. This is printed on Epson presentation paper. And so you can see the difference even in the vibrancy of the color, or I can see. This is kind of really dull looking. Anyway, so we'll go. All right, so now I'm going to get into my Hansa yellow. If I can find where I put my, there it is. My Hansa yellow, and let's see. Actually, that would probably lend itself more to the ochre. So I'm going to get into the ochre. What?
I don't understand how you fixed your color chart. How do you know?
Oh, how did I fix my color chart? Okay, so like for this line right here, all I did was take, let me show you. Let me just show you. Let me scoot him to the side. So I took yellow ochre. And alizarin crimson. And then as I go down, I can add in more yellow or more crimson and get this variety of skin colors. And so what I did on this color chart was to do the yellow, the alizarin crimson, and then just a combination. And then it's like more pink, more yellow of just these two colors, more water, probably just a little bit more pink. And so all of that, let's see if I've got the little swirl things. Now this is on mixed media paper, but I was just playing with this, and it's not the paper that I like to use because it's got, you can see the blooms that came up in here, but this is with yellow ochre, and then the alizarin crimson. And so I would just mix these colors right here and there. Here's this alizarin crimson, and I actually threw in some purple and burnt umber to get these really deep colors that may need to be used with his skin color.
So did you write on your chart what you?
Yes,
Okay.
and the chart right here, on this chart, it actually has it written. And on the chart that I was going to print for y'all, it has the colors written too.
Gotcha.
I just didn't write them off by hand on this. And but the same thing. And it doesn't have to be alizarin crimson. It can be permanent rose or quinacridone rose, or I think I've got another one that's a Susan Shui color, you know, just a rosy pink, and then that gives you a shade, you know, instead of just trying to do just the flesh color. And a lot of times we forget that the shadows, and I think that the old masters, they used a lot of green in their under things, the undercoats. And I know when Carolyn does her portraits, she does, I know for a while she did a wash of the printer colors, of the yellow, a little light turquoise, and a rose color, and let that dry. Real thin wash, and then she would come back and put her portrait colors on there. So here he is, and we're looking to see what color I needed, and I think that I decided that probably towards this ochre, get this back up here, and some alizarin crimson. And rather than just putting everything down in there all at one time, where is that color? That's looking pretty good for the side of his face. So obviously, I've already done the hard lifting beforehand, did the purple in there to start off with. And my water is probably about the right color, flesh color, so if I get that on here, I'm not going to worry about staining the paper because, okay, so let me talk about this. This is wet and wet. And so I'm wetting the paper, and wetting the paper to start off with does a couple of things. One, it buys you a little bit of time. It primes the paper so that your color doesn't go zap straight into the paper. And so you can kind of move that around just a little bit. And he is very pink under here. And there's hair over on this side, so I'm not going to touch that. It was in shadow, so I definitely wanted it to show. A little bit more. Just need some more pigment to get this dark enough. So I can touch off here, and because I've got purple on here, I'll do this and see if and then this is going to dry lighter, and am I close? Pretty close. And I'm going to stop right about in there because there's hair right in there. And this is really dark in this area. And that's a highlight through there. And a lot of that highlight is going to show because of the purple. And now I'm going to come back up in here where it's a little bit rosier. A little bit more water. This is going to dry 50% lighter. So what I need to do is take one of those David Lobenberger workshops where you paint their faces green and purple and orange and you use stencils. And I think one of our members, Susie, took one of his classes at Cloudcroft this year. All right, I think that because it's going to dry lighter, I'm not going to try to take any of this out. But let's go while I've got that palette mixed up. I'm going to avoid this one right now. I'm going to go ahead and come down. That nose is really light right there, so I'm going to avoid that. I'm going to get in this. And I'm going to find me a stopping spot here in a minute so that y'all can get you a snack. All right. I'm not hungry. We ate really well. We'd love to go to Taco Jalisco. What? No, I didn't say it right. Jalisco, Taqueria. What is it, Renee?
You got it. Taqueria Jalisco, I think.
Yeah. So this little guy over here, his name, that's Tom Orsak, and he is a plein air watercolor artist. He and Tim do some competitions and stuff together. And let's bring in just a little bit more rose color. So I'm going to mix this up here, not down in my deep part, but he's a little bit rosier, and I don't want to get too rose so that it is a different color above the glasses and below the glasses. And I painted his eyes already so he wouldn't look creepy in there. Now that, because I have not wet this paper over here, I'm trying to keep a wet edge so that I don't get like a dry line. So after I painted John Glenn, then in the 60s, I started painting, you know, Eric Burdon, Mick Jagger, Paul McCartney. All my friends were in love with, not me, but they were in love with all of the rock stars. Now, I think he hadn't shaved, so we have some little bristlies going on. I'm going to leave those bristlies alone. And if I decide to come back and add bristlies in, I can do that with several ways, actually. I could like use a little razor knife tip and tip in there and get some of that white of the paper, just kind of scratch it back to the white of the paper. Or I've got a little Signo Uniball pen, a white one, and I could do that. That's a way that I could get some of the white back in there. Or I can just pretend like he was clean shaven. And let's not forget his eye over on this side. This is pretty dark, and actually I'm going to probably end up having to come back in one more time. And by the time I finish, I might have 4 or 5 glazing layers.
Do you just keep layering with those colors?
Mm-hmm. Or if I see that, oh, that looks like that's a little bit more purple or a little bit more red, then I'll come back and do that. Just see what else it looks like that it needs. And sometimes, I can't believe these words are going to come out of my mouth, but I'm going to say them anyway. They don't have to be like actually, totally, completely real colors. I mean, you can intensify those colors and make them stronger, make them darker. And I don't want to mess with this too much because I don't want to wind up getting a bloom. But you're actually the boss of your painting. I know that a lot of times it feels like our paintings are bossing us around and telling us what to do, but you absolutely have some control over that. Now I'm going to get just a little bit of umber in that because it's a little dark right in here. And this is a funny thing because there's a highlight inside of this shadow. Put some of this in here. Y'all got questions?
Do you have a big brush?
I do. And I know. It's like, okay, big brush, move away, hold the brush at the end, lose control. So one of the things that whenever I took one of Linda Baker's workshops, and she did the poured watercolor workshop, you get a little bit more rose in there, and I really liked this little quote she had. It was like, if you begin with abandon, move to control, and if you start with control, move to abandon. So I actually, in some ways, have tried to do some of that. I'm not really successful with that just yet, but I'm working on it. Joe Beth's going to come to Colorado City and do a paint on canvas workshop for our West Texas Art Guild, and so I'm excited about that because I know she's going to force us to use big brushes and move away from some of our control. Control. Okay, so I'm going to stop with that for a minute. A lot of what's going to make the difference in this is going to be, once I get more and more layers on here. But let's come back over here to this, she should be dry now. And I don't want to just do this as portrait, but finding your colors, how to find the colors that you're looking for and how to mix those colors. And so now we have this little shadow that's really dark right here. And I'm going to use a little brush, a little bitty brush. A little bitty brush. And umber. But there's a little rose to this, so let me come back over into this little spot right over here. Pick up some of that rose color. And because this is a glazing layer, and also this has a soft edge to it, so I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of water just around the edge of where this shadow is going to be. Just a little bit. And because this is wet, and I see that it needs just a little bit more, and could it possibly need just a little bit more purple? Very possibly. But if you go ahead and mix it here first, and then as you come over onto your paper, let those colors run together and mingle together. And I don't want to lose the little round shape of the nose here. There's a dark shadow like right up underneath here also. Around. So I had a friend the other day ask me about